Our next speaker this morning is Patrick McGurn from Caomhnú Árann Operational Group, and he's going to talk to us about innovation in the agricultural and ecological output. So Patrick, you're welcome to the stage.
Hello, thank you, Brendan. My name is Patrick McGurn, and I'm delighted to be here today to talk on behalf of the Caomhnú Árann Operational Group. Caomhnú Árann is a project on the Aran Islands, and the Aran Islands being a Gaeltacht area, the title is in Irish. So Caomhnú Árann basically means conserve Aran. And the operational group is made up of the farmers of the Aran Islands, Teagasc, both the research division and the advisory division, Phosphate Ireland, because of the importance of agriculture with tourism, and the Department of Culture, Heritage and Gaeltacht, and that includes both the Island Division and the National Parks and Wildlife Service. So that's our operational group.
The bigger button to keep going.
The bigger button?
The other big one.
So we started, we're into our first year now. We started with a project team, which is myself, the project manager. Amanda Brown in the middle is the ecology, the scientific person, and Grania Knichonili is finance administration and deals with all of the less interesting aspects of it, in terms of visually anyway. So that's our project team, and we've started on the island. Our aim, to be fair, really is the production of these beautiful species-rich grassland, which are already on the island. Now, we're not saying that they're already there. Some of them are in great condition, some of them are in poor condition, some of them are excellent. But this is what we're trying to produce, and this magnificent. Like, you don't need to be an ecologist to walk in to know that they're magnificent grasslands, and they're what. But what our partners, the farmers, are really interested in more is the production of these cattle. That's what they're producing. And as little money as there is in beef, there's even less money in wildflowers. So how do we encourage to keep wildflowers when there's little money in them? And that probably I'll come to that later. So what we are trying to do is put in the conditions that allow the maximum to maximize the species-rich grasslands. And these species-rich grasslands are very dependent on continuous grazing. And this is just a photograph taken on one of our farms on Inishmaan, which is one farmer who's scored very high, everything was perfect, no scrub, all the rain catches, so all the features were there. And the species-rich grasslands are dependent on those grazing cattle. And to be fair, the grazing cattle are not as dependent on the species-rich grassland, which is why we're losing species-rich grasslands all through Ireland, So we're trying to, how do we balance the two of them? So we do a range of things, and I sort of like this photograph because it sort of sums up a lot of some of the issues. And just look behind the rain. This is what's called a tank in the island, water tank. There's no fresh water in the island, so that it relies on water, the rainfall collecting. And this breaks down. And if this breaks down, the cost of fixing it is not worth the grazing that you get out of the field, because you might graze that field for 1 week with 3 cows, and it might cost you £600-700 to fix and a lot of work. So it's just not worth it, and that's what's happening. And if you notice in the background, all the scrub that's coming up around the field as a result. So an awful lot of our work is put in place where the farmer carries out these actions about improving the rain tanks, supplying new tanks, and scrub control. And this is just a before and after photograph, which was actually on a previous project, AranLIFE. But if you notice at the back, all the scrubs cleared, the tanks that's the same tank being total fixed. It took me half an hour to walk just to get this photograph. Can you imagine what it took the farmer to carry the bags of cement up to fix it as well? So that's what the basis of the project for the farmers, these actions to do that, which I'm not really going to go into so much now. But the overall measure is, again, to end up with these. And what do we do? How do we get these, and how do we measure them, and how do we record them, and how do we put it sort of into a results-based thing? That's what we're working on. So Caomhnú Árann is basically, the first thing we're trying to look at is the use of remote sensing in developing farm plans and in habitat assessment. We're not maybe seeing the need to walk every field. Can we do it other ways? And that's part of our innovation. The next thing is to try a simple results-based measure for grassland habitats that suits the islands, and it could be rolled out wider into other areas. Then determine the feasibility of alternative markets from the grassland, and that's particularly in the production of wildflower seeds, which we'll mention afterwards. So just that cattle might not be the only thing that comes off the grassland. Can we do anything else? And finally, improving the output of existing production on farms. My background is agriculture, and what I do find is an awful lot of the research that has been done in the past is on improving more intensive type agriculture. There are issues on extensive agriculture, and the approach to rectify them is more on intensification or changes, and there's not so much information on fixing problems in the extensive agriculture section. So how have we started? This is Cliona Keneally, one of our farmers, one of 126 farmers that we have. So we had held expressions of interest of anybody wanting to work with us in the project. We had public meetings on the island and put forward anybody want to work with us. We had told them what we were planning to do, what was required of them. And there's about 200 farmers on the island, so 126 expressed an interest, which gave us a bit of a headache because we only had funding for 100. But we put it to the farmers, what do you want to do? Do you want a selection criteria? The farmers are one of the partners. They said no, we'd rather you just try to, if you as a group can manage the 126, we'll reduce whatever costs are involved, and we'd rather work with that than and they said it's much easier for you too, because when you go out on the island, you're not meeting people saying, why didn't I get in? And that's true. But that was the farmers' approach, and that was one of the beauties of the partnership. We didn't dictate it, we didn't say it, we asked the farmers, what do you think we should do? And that was the result. And this is the farm plan that we're producing, and this is what we learned from other things, both from AranLIFE and the AranLIFE, as simple as possible. We outlined the scrub, so this is the first stage of it, F, G, C, they're scrub parcels, and if you just take a note, maybe a C, we'll probably come back to that one. The one and the two are tanks, water tanks. So the farmer knows that that's what they have to do in the first year and the costs that are involved in that. So we've done that for 126 farmers. Now, this way, how do you do that, right? For scrub control, right? We can visit each individual field, mark on what scrub has to be done. That's a possibility. An awful lot of work, This is our farms in Inishmaan. That's all the land parcels. That's a lot of walking. Whether to assess for tanks or whether to assess for quality of the habitat, And each colour is a different farm, so you'll actually see some farms spread from one end of the island to the other, and they're all fragmented, which is partly why the reason people stop grazing a small, if that's your field there, and the rest of your farm's way up here, after a while, and there's no water in it, after a while you forget about it. Why would you? It's not agriculturally, the value's not out of it. So we're looking at ways of how do we do that. So what we're doing is looking at drone technology, and we put the tender, but it was Maynooth University came back to us to look at the best technology to use using drones, and we've worked with a couple of other EIP groups who hopefully, and we'll make it available to any other EIP group because we've spent a bit of money on this, and other EIP have no need to spend that money. This is about the best systems, the best software to use, and there's 2 other groups that are going to use this program, so that's good interaction between the EIP groups. So this was one of the drones. Now drones aren't all these wee things that you see flying around. Some of them are quite fairly big things. This one crashed now, but it's nothing to do with us. But this one had the capacity of covering an awful big volume of area. Now we're not buying this one because it's too extreme. There's only 2 of these, I think, in Ireland. But the beauty of drones, you can use all different cameras in them. It's not just, you can use infrared, heat, which start to dictate, you can start finding out the difference with the land. So this is what we're using. This is what we hope to invest in more because we use this, because this can cover a fair bit of land as well. Now, Mickey Keneally took this photograph from me. Mickey Keneally is one of the 126 farmers. This is the beauty of the partnership approach. When we needed someone to take out the people with the drones, it's quite awkward for me to get the island. You ring somebody in the partnership. You say, Mickey, would you take this group out? He told me it was the most boring day because the boys talk more about gigabytes than anything else, you know. But there, and he sent me that photograph to show him, because but again, it's the beauty of the partnership approach that we just get the farmer, ring one of the farmers to come do. So we hope to purchase some of these soon and then use them and to take some area photography, and also to train a couple of farmers in each of the island. There's no need for myself and Amanda or Grania to be out doing it all the time when we can get some of the farmers to do it for us, you know, as partnership. So that's the next stage that we're doing. So when I talked about one of the parcels C, I think it was, we looked at how do we map, can we map scrub? Now, it's probably important to point out that we know the islands quite well. So we sort of know where very sensitive areas are and less sensitive areas. So when we're looking at scrub control, this is just using Bing on a field, and you can see you can see the scrub. This was the Department of Agriculture maps in 2018, you know, and you can start to see where the scrub levels are to be cleared. You can't really see the light, but this is the drone, using the drones, and it's much higher. You can zoom in it and you can start to map out quite well. And then basically we just map based on that and the cost, and we can come up, and that was medium. So it's not totally covered in scrub, but about over maybe 50-60% of it's covered in scrub. And that's the way we produced our farm plans for the scrub control. And it has worked, and the farmers can come back to us, and they'll come back to us if they think they're wrong. And some of them have, for things that, you know, or come back and said to us, look, that's ungrazable, you know, there's no point in clearing the scrub there. And we have stressed that them the whole time, that this is not a scheme, this is a project, and you need to feed back to us. And we've had very positive feedback. The approach then that we'll be taking next is the results based, because there's no point in producing these fantastic grasslands. We need to have a look. Now, we have taken a different approach maybe than a lot of other groups to the sort of outcome based. We've probably tried to go on a bit simpler. And that's fair enough, because it wouldn't be innovation if we were all doing the same thing. So we're trying, I have spent a lot of my working life sort of surveying fields, I suppose. So we sort of took out what was common denominators to all grasslands, like sward height, bare soil enough to know, which would apply to an intensive perennial ryegrass field, you know. So we just went straight. We're interested in wildflowers, and we are looking at the plants that are present. And that's our scoring system. Going back to the field that I showed you earlier that was very rich in wildflowers, everybody walks in and says, yeah, this is nice, rich in wildflowers. You might know what the wildflowers are, you know, and they could be the wrong ones, but we've indicator plants. So our 5, well, we'll start with our 1, which is sort of arable or thick scrub that we just don't think is worth. Number 2 then is semi-improved habitat, which is agriculturally quite interesting, or it was good from an agriculture point of view. It may contain some indicator species, but in general it's just improved or semi-improved grassland. So we have no payment structure in that. Again, all our habitats have to be grazed. With 3, we're looking at priority habitat, which in our case is calcareous grassland and limestone grassland and maher. With reduced number of positive indicator species. It's not optimal grazed, but sort of definition of it, there's maybe still 2 and 4 positive indicators in at least 1 square metre out of its 6 out of random 10. So you're just walking through the field, you're taking a random sample through it. 4 would be just, there'd be some scrub levels in it, and 5 would be perfect. So if 5 or more positive indicators are located in an area of 1 square metre at 8 out of 10 random points in a field, then it'd have a score 5. The other 2 could be scrub, they could be slightly improved grassland, you know, but in general, that's what we're looking in the indicator species. We have found that it's working quite well first, you know, and it's quite easy to roll out, and it's quite easy for farmers to understand. So that is the basis of us. The next problem for us is, can we do it using remote sensing? Can we look at it using drones? Can I fly a drone around the farm and come back to the office and sort of look at it then? That's our next step. So this is drone technology taken at, this thing is taken at 100 metres, yeah? This is the field where the scrub was, I showed you earlier. This is 100 metres. This would be 60 metres down. You can still see the spot there. This is 30 metres, 20 metres, and that's 10 metres. Now you can nearly count the sepals on the daisy, so, and you can see all the bracken coming into it, so and you can see the bloody cranes built. Now, can we use drone technology? That's what our project is. We mightn't be able to. Those of you who are ecologists or botanists out there might be safe enough. You mightn't be replaced by drones yet, but we still need ecologists and botanists to come back and look at this and deem, is it species, is it good quality grassland? And that's a major part of our project. The next thing that we looked upon, as I mentioned earlier, can we increase the output of the land? And one thing is wild seed production. Both the Burren and the Aran Islands were the winterage approach, where you just let this sward grow all year round till it seeds. You do have this big harvest of seed that you could take off it, that doesn't affect the agricultural output. The farmers can still graze it. So we are looking at that. And this came back from one of our farmers when we were drawing up the project. Globally, something like $18 billion is spent on restoration of grasslands. Maybe that being motorways or whatever, the sides of motorways, garden plots or whatever, or the area. But also we have up to 300,000 people visiting islands every year. Would they be interested in buying packets, seed bombs or small seed pockets where they can grow their own bit of Aran Island when they go back home again? We're not looking to do this, we're looking to see the feasibility of it. Can we gather seed off of it that doesn't affect the ecological integrity of the sward? That's what we're looking for. What volume can we gather? Is it feasible? And we've talked with other EIP groups as well, just to supply in seed for them, which is again a link between the different EIPs. So that's our next stage. At the moment, this is how we're collecting it. It's basically a leaf blower in reverse, and it sucks up seed. We've been out May, July, and September, different stages of the year, and different to see what volume we get. It's quite labour intensive. We've also hand-picked seed so we can identify it. But that's just what we're looking at. Farmers are quite interested in it to see where we're going, and that's what we'll follow up over the next year now to see how it goes. This winter we're going to have to see how useful the seed is, to see if we can break it down. And that's the start of the work that Amanda's been working on, breaking down the different seed that we're picking up. The other thing I mentioned then, so we're looking at the actual agricultural output. Can we improve the agricultural output? So one of the big things that we found from a previous project, AranLIFE, was phosphorus is extremely deficient on the Aran Islands, and it does affect cattle in bad years, and they do show the classic signs of eating anything, pica it's called, and there's not really a problem of phosphate deficiency in Ireland in general. There was a wee bit in intensive dairy cows, but it's very easy to rectify phosphate deficient. You just go out and put a bag of fertiliser on. Any agriculturist will tell you, quite easy. A couple of bags of fertiliser of 20-10-10, you've solved your phosphate deficiency. If we're trying to maintain species-rich grasslands and reward farmers to keep in species-rich grasslands, well, we don't want them putting that bag of 20-10-10 on, because the wildflowers will go and their score will go down. So how do we rectify the fact that phosphorus could be deficient, So that's one of our things. And we've had great bother, actually. I've had to go to Australia, not personally go to Australia, but the contact is in Australia, this man Dixon, who was intrigued. He's a professor in the University of Queensland, but he's done most of the work, because the only other areas that phosphate is deficient is in the ranges of, or the sort of the outback of Australia and part of South Africa, where you have big open ranges, and there's phosphates deficiency there. So we're looking, how did they look at it? And we're looking, can we supply, we can supply nutrients and minerals. Now this boy doesn't look as though he's that phosphorus deficient, to be fair to him, but we can supply the nutrients for minerals, but not phosphate. Phosphate, you need a fair bit of phosphate. The cattle need something like it's milligrams as opposed to micrograms they need. So can we find a system that supplies the phosphate without affecting the integrity of the grasslands? So that's the other part of our work from the agricultural output. And farmers find that interesting because this is what they're more interested in. So that's basically all I was going to talk to you about. This picture sort of sums it up. It's the cattle grazing among the wildflowers. That is what we're trying to continue. And can we feed into future rural development programs to ensure that programs are suitable, that picture can be maintained. So thank you very much. You'll find more details. We have a website there. Thank you.
Thanks. very much, Patrick, for again a fantastic presentation. And I think what's really strong there is the evidence of partnership. And of course, Patrick has had a good opportunity over the last few years through AranLIFE and a great team to build up that partnership. But also the innovation, so much innovation in that project. It's brilliant. It really is brilliant.